Let's talk to Ben Habib, former MEP, of course. We had Suella Braverman early yesterday saying basically that it's going to be impossible to get the backlog down sufficiently. So you know what's going to come next. Inevitably, there'll be some kind of amnesty offered. Ben, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. I mean, they're already offering an amnesty, aren't they, Mike? I mean, in a sense, because they've simplified the paperwork, they're accelerating it, they're giving people rights to stay for longer. They've reversed some of the provisions of the Nationality and Borders Bill that became the Act under Priti Patel. You know, every time they say they're going to use deterrent as a mechanism to stop these people from crossing the channel, they weaken the deterrent, you know. I just don't know what they're thinking, frankly. Sorry, I've jumped in. I've just gone straight. You know,
no, listen, I'm happy that you did, because there are so many questions around it. One of them is, though, why is everybody coming? Because they can, presumably, is the answer, right? Yeah,
I think it's push and pull, isn't it? You know, we had a big spike of asylum applications back in the early 2000s during the, during the invasion of Iraq. And first of all, Afghanistan and then Iraq. There was a big uptick in asylum applications to the UK. But then we had Angela Merkel do something utterly lunatic in 2015 when she put an open invitation to Syrians to come into Germany. And, you know, they took 1 million people. Can you imagine, Mike, 1 million people overnight? And that essentially signaled to the rest of the world that Europe was open. And remember, the United Kingdom was part of freedom of movement then. And so we don't, you know, that invitation that went out, that sort of Europe is open sign, I think has been really difficult to close. And as being, you know, being a member of the European Union, we suffered freedom of movement back in 2015. So if these people got the right to stay in Europe, they would then have the right to come to the United Kingdom. Thankfully, we weren't part of the Schengen zone. And I think the Schengen zone has a lot to answer for, because the minute they're into a Schengen country, they can then literally walk across borders without being required to show any paperwork and just turn up on the French beaches, in effect, and get in these dinghies and try and make it to the UK. So it's a function, I think, of foreign policy back in the early 2000s, and then we've compounded it with the Arab Spring, which created a kind of push towards Europe and the UK. And then this kind of completely stupid open borders attitude, both external to the European Union and also internal to the EU. And people keep telling me, oh, you know, before Brexit, we didn't have this influx of people. It's got nothing to do with Brexit. It's to do with idiotic European Union policies on the subject. Which kind of lunatic doesn't protect their borders? And sadly, we're falling straight into that trap. And the more I debate this, the crosser I get about it all, because it's so obvious that the only thing we need to do is to shut our borders, don't we, Mike? Shut the border.
Absolutely right. And stop saying, oh, but, you know, we do need immigrant work because, you know, we've invited 1.2 million people in legally. And, oh, but that's only because people came from Ukraine and Hong Kong. No, it isn't. People are coming from India, people are coming from all sorts of parts of North Africa, people are coming from Pakistan, people are coming from all over the world legally. You know, it may be that the man who is currently being held in Nottingham came here on a student visa. We understand he came here legally. We don't know exactly how long ago, but around about 10 or 11 years ago. He's 31 now. You know, he may well be one of those people that overstayed a visa. If that's true, then that's a real problem. And I also want to point out that back in the beginning of the century, when Blair was in charge, there were 3 countries which took absolutely no limit on the number of people that would be allowed into the country. And that was nothing to do with Schengen, but it was Sweden, it was Ireland, and it was Britain, right? The 3 countries which are now suffering with a very, very big illegal migration problem.
A huge problem. And, you know, we tend to analyse the problem through pounds, shillings and pence, and the burden it puts on our public sectors. But there's something much more sinister going on, and we've got to talk about it. And it's the undermining of the social fabric of the United Kingdom. A lot of these people come here with values that are alien to us and hold our values in contempt. And they don't assimilate. They don't wish to be British in the sense that I believe British to be. They don't want to support our values. They trash them. They trash our heritage, they trash our history, and then try and impose their views on us. And that this is going to become an increasingly bigger problem. And it's one that can't be addressed through pounds, shillings and pence. Even if you can build the number of houses required, even if you can provide them with all the free medical care that we so willingly give them, free dental care and all the rest of it, we will not mend the social fabric of this country. And that is deeply, deeply dangerous, because part of the reason, Mike, that we're so welcoming is because of the wonderful values that we have as a country. But those values will change, and we will become a much more difficult society if we don't address this problem now. It's got to be done for the sake of the country, for the sake of the integrity of the United Kingdom and what we are and what we believe in. We've got to get a grip of this problem, and the politicians have got to stop talking about it through a prism of humanitarianism and a need to be welcoming and only deporting those who haven't got a valid asylum claim, and shut the wretched borders and only allow people in who've actually got the right to enter, who we know, you know, the identity of whom we know. We've checked them, we've vetted them, they've been through our processes. Everyone else should be stopped from entering. There should be no illegal immigration coming into the UK. None.
No. And yet, once again, despite what Rishi Sunak said the other day, 1,200 more people have come in the last 3 days alone. Why? Because the weather's nice, the tides are running in the right direction, and there's plenty of people waiting in Calais to go to the next dinghy. So, you know, until you stop them doing that, it's just going to get worse.
It is going to get worse. And, I mean, the whole thing has just gone utterly daft. You know, Rishi Sunak pretending that he got a grip of the problem by rushing down to Dover and getting that, you know, moment on camera, which he obviously, you know, that trip wasn't announced. It was short term because he was told the weather's going to change and they're going to come in numbers. And sure enough, a day or two later, they've started coming in numbers again. I mean, I just don't know where we go with this, Mike. We have a government that is so weak, it won't face up to what the nature of this problem is, which is a failure to enforce our borders. And as I've said on your program before, we possess all the rights and international laws that we need in order to prevent people seeking to enter our territorial waters illegally. It's all there to be read in plain black and white in the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. It's international law on the subject, but we will not enforce our rights. It's just wretched.
Yeah, it really is. And let's hope that we don't have to have too many more of these conversations before the next election, Ben, but I fear we will. Ben Habib, former MEP there.